we have built on their determination, perseverance, and their sweat. We continue to thrive on the legacy and hard work. Their footprints in our economic development is indelible. Mauritius is now a middle-income country, and we have the ambition to move to a high-income economy. Mr. President, Mauritius has a population of 1.2 million, of which 581,000 constituted our labor force in 2016, and women represented 39% of our workforce. Women are present in all sectors of our economy, and some of them hold high posts in public and private sectors. Our unemployment rate stood at 7.3 last year. Among the unemployed, women outnumbered men, though they were generally more qualified. Successive governments have committed themselves to protect women's rights, to improve their standards of living and the quality of life. The setting up of a specific Ministry of Women Affairs as far back as 1982, which has now shifted to that of Gender and Development, bears testimony to the importance given to women's rights. A whole range of legislative reforms, policies and programs has been put in place at all levels during the past 40 years, aiming to empower women and to promote their safety, their well-being, their economic security, as well as those of their families. We are also slowly but surely witnessing an improvement in women's participation in decision-making, such as the feminization of the civil service, with an increased number of women in top decision-making positions. As regards women in politics, there has been a significant leap from 5% to 17% of national parliamentary level, as well as at local government level. However, Mauritius has launched a National Gender Policy Framework, NGPF, which calls upon a strategic partnership at all levels, including the private sector, the media, political parties, and civil society organizations, to consolidate resources to achieve gender equality. The NGPF also urges the private sector organizations to create an enabling environment for making use of the potential and talents of women as well as men, and develop human resource strategies that allows for family-friendly policies. The objective is to build partnership with the private sector to promote inclusive and sustainable development and growth, to contribute towards attaining gender equality and empowerment for women and girls. Mr. President, the empowerment of women and their upward mobility in our society has been anchored on our overall development drive through free education up to tertiary level, free healthcare services, and extension of social safety nets and benefits. The ILO conventions, which Mauritius has ratified and domesticated in its Employment Rights Act, also helped to improve the conditions of work for women in Mauritius, as they guarantee a gender equality mandate in terms of equal remuneration, equality of opportunity, and treatment in respect of employment and occupation, equal access to labor market, protection against all forms of discrimination and violence, including sexual harassment at workplace. Other safeguards, such as the workers' fundamental rights, rights to dignity, economic and social welfare rights, protection against unfair practices, and decisions on maternity protection, ensure adequate protection to working women in Mauritius. I also wish to highlight that we have nurtured a culture of rich dialogue, consultation, and collective bargaining between the public-private sector workers group, which paved the way for sustained economic growth and diversification of our economy. No doubt, the role of workers and private sector has been crucial for our economic progress, while the government, with its sound and the right mix of policies, all along acts as a facilitator. Mr. President, in Africa, significant progress has been made in closing gender gaps. Despite these gains, African women continue to face adverse situations. Girls are still much less likely than boys to benefit from secondary education. They have little influence over resources and norms, restricting their access to jobs and thus limiting their earning potential in agriculture, enterprise, or the labor market. Women in Africa make a sizable contribution to the continent's economy. They are more economically active as farmers and entrepreneurs, owning 1/3 of the businesses and growing most of Africa's food. In 11 African countries, women hold close to 1/3 of the seats in parliament, more than in Europe. Over and above their income-earning activities, women are central to the household economy and the welfare of their families, and they play a vital, if sometimes unacknowledged, leadership role in their communities and nations. However, African women are held back from fulfilling their potential by many constraints, whether as leaders in public life, in the boardroom, or in growing their businesses. This is in turn holding back the potential of the continent's economy. Eliminating gender inequality and empowering women would raise the productive potential of 1 billion Africans, delivering a huge boost to the continent's development potential. Mr. President, may I commend all heads of delegation and representatives of government, the workers and employers groups for the formidable spirit of dialogue and consensus that have always accompanied and underpinned their discussions, decisions, the various resolutions and conventions adopted over the span of almost a century. This spirit of consensus has transformed the world of work. You have shaped the ILO's agenda, and your legacies will be important milestone in the history of humankind. I also congratulate you for the fruitful outcomes that you have achieved after intense and constructive deliberations at the current 106th session of the International Labour Conference and the adoption of the recommendation on employment and decent work for peace and resilience. I'm happy to note that the ILO encourages government, employers and workers groups to include a high percentage of women in their delegations with a view to achieving gender parity in participation to the ILO, to the International Labour Conference. Mr. President, in 2015, the world's leaders endorsed the 2030 United Nations Agenda for Sustainable Development. The 17 SDGs are inextricably linked in SDG 5 relating to gender equality and SDG 6, that of decent work and economic growth. The challenge in the implementation is that the burden of attainment of the SDGs are universal and would have to be applied by both developed and developing countries. Increasingly, the gender parity and achieving the attainment of the SDGs in a holistic and comprehensive manner has the potential of positively shaping synchronous outcomes such as improving infant and child mortality rates, increased labor force participation rates, and earnings, or fostering further educational investment in children. We believe that the ILO and as other UN agencies should discuss and take the necessary actions to help in the realization of the relevant goals and targets of the 2030 Agenda. Mr. President, I wish to underscore that the challenges to attainment of the SDGs are also shaped by global geoeconomic and political realities. The world of work is being influenced by changes in production methods in the fourth industrial revolution era. Leaps in science and technology are having profound impacts on the nature of jobs. Zero job growth with increased automation in the manufacturing and services sector. These profound changes are putting heavy responsibilities on governments, the business community, and the workers to discuss and embrace the right strategies to sustain employment, narrow income and social inequalities, and ensure the development of the right mix of human capital and skills to sustain growth and economic development. Decision makers must contend with the growing discontent on the nature of globalization, and I'm confronted that in the discussion in various fora, including that of the ILO, there is an increasing need felt for inclusive growth and for increasing participation of women in economic activities. Women are half of the world's population, and they deserve equal access to health, education, economic participation, earning potential, and political decision-making power. To cite the World Economic Forum, improving gender parity with dividends, unquote. Mr. President, for developing countries, increasing the participation of girls in the education system has a multiplier effect in sharing future income earnings equivalent to potential increase in GDP by 1.5%. Similarly, broadening women's engagement in public life addresses issues that have broader society implications touching family life, education, and health. Women's participation fosters greater credibility in institutions and lead to heightened democratic outcomes. Women's participation in the formal economy, or lack thereof, is also a business issue. Female talents and intuition remain one of the most underutilized business resources. I'm pleased to note that increasingly business leaders and government agree that tackling barriers to equality is of necessity. Business leaders are addressing gender parity in companies as a matter of fairness and equality and are becoming more aware of the rationale for diversity in the management boards. The presence of women is leading to informed corporate decision-making and business innovation. When it comes to leadership position, companies with women in executive management committees have shown to perform better. Mr. President, let me refer to the conclusions of the ILO Gallup report, which highlights some of the obdurate obstacles to women's participation in economic activities, and these relate to right balance between work and family, the shortage of affordable care facilities, unequal pays, persistent unfair treatment and harassment at work, lack of equal opportunities and redress mechanism, discrimination, and in many regions due to cultural and social norms. Whilst many countries are closing the gap, globally, only 54% of the working age women are taking part in the formal economy as compared to 81% for men. Women make up a sizable part of discouraged job seekers, and on average, the women employment rates are 2% higher. Average female representation on boards is only 14%, and only 5 countries have women cross the 30% threshold, that is Iceland, Norway, France, Latvia, and Finland. The wage gap is persistent. Globally, women's average earning almost half of those of men. Countries that have performed well are Norway, Slovenia, Sweden, Mozambique, Tanzania, and Rwanda are some of the top performers in Africa, and these efforts should be replicated at a larger scale. Mr. President, in some countries we still have restrictive legislation that hampers women's access to financial services, ability to inherit assets, and access to land and non-land assets, including the basic possibility of opening a bank account. Stereotyping in business and societal judgment also hamper ability of female entrepreneurs, whether at corporate or SME levels. We should not also underestimate the fact that women have to work even additional hours. While they enter labor force, they still retain the primary responsibility for unpaid work such as caregiving and household chores. Women are paying the penalty of motherhood and must endure the penalty of double shifts, that is professional work and parenting. Thus, it is important that we learn from existing innovative policies, like in the Nordic countries, to facilitate women's integration in the workforce. These could include financial arrangement to take care of children or the elders at home, family benefits and subsidies, parental leaves, career breaks, sabbatical leaves, remote work possibilities, reduced working time, flexible hours. These measures, viewed from the long-term spectrum, will surely lead to societal and economic returns. Mr. President, there is a direct relation between education and human capital development. Investing in girls' education and not restricting them to confined areas of studies will also help in their emancipation. Encouraging girls to pursue studies in the field of science, mathematics, engineering or architecture, and other specialized fields will help in their emancipation and future career paths. Perhaps stronger and more affirmative action with a broad range of fiscal and social policy instruments to enable the smoother participation of women in work should be envisaged. More importantly, more familiar to all of you here is the necessity for public-private cooperation including the spirit of tripartism that can help to find consensus to bridging the gender gaps. Mr. President, to conclude, and to quote from the ILO report on the future of work, the founders of ILO social justice, when they started the deliberations 98 years ago. This crave for social justice is even more pronounced as we see the nexus and the interconnectedness between social, economic, and political developments. Perception of unfair need to be vanquished, and I'm confident that the deliberation in the context of the ILO Centenary Initiative will spearhead the values-led agenda and initiatives of the ILO. It behoves upon all of us as representative of governments, employers and workers to bring to fruition through appropriate policies and actions the crucial targets of elimination of the gender gaps and facilitate the participation of women in work. I thank you for your attention.